Welcome back to Psychology 545. I'm Dr. Harry Beeman, and this video is intended to help you understand a proper paper format using the American Psychological Association. In this video, we'll be discussing the American Psychological Association or APA format support materials, take a look at general paper requirements, review university allowed exceptions. I'll show you examples of title page, headings, an introductory paragraph, the first page, a transition sentence, and talk a little bit about a conclusion. As I said in earlier videos, the university has provided an APA writing style sample paper which I've posted in the main forum under the APA support thread. Please review this. If you follow this, you really don't need to purchase an APA manual. There's also a previous student's paper posted in the main forum under APA support thread. So let's start by looking at some general requirements for all papers. Always use black 12-point Times New Roman font throughout the paper. Don't introduce any other fonts. Stick to this particular font in that particular size. All lines of the paper throughout are double-spaced. Use 1-inch margins throughout the paper, and use one space after a period at the end of a sentence. Sometimes two spaces are used for doctoral dissertations, but we'll just stick with one space after a period. Indent the first line of the paragraph 5 to 7 spaces, and this is easiest done by hitting the tab button. It'll take you directly to about 5 to 7 spaces. And also please use page numbers in the upper right corner of the header for each page number, for each page of the paper. As I stated in a previous video, the university does allow some exemptions to this format, and so again, we will not be using a running head, and we will not be using an abstract for any paper for this course. Now then, let's begin with the title page. Title page is a standalone, one-page introduction to the paper that just basically gives information relative to the title of the paper, the date, the author, and the individual that's facilitating the course. This information is centered on the page. Again, it's double-spaced, positioned in the upper half of the page. Here's an example. You'll notice the page number is up in the top margin, the title of the assignment, your name goes here, Psych 545 here, the date that you completed the assignment, and my name goes here. That's all that goes on this page, nothing else. The next page of all papers would be, well, the first page. And center the title of the paper at the top of this page. Don't use the word introduction. For some reason, APA stopped allowing the use of the word introduction several years ago. They want you to use the title of the paper. The title of the paper is not bolded, but it does consist of upper and lowercase words. Here's an example. You'll notice again, we've got page 2. The title of the paper is centered on the page. It's a mixture of upper and lowercase words, letters, and it's not bolded. So here's basically an introductory paragraph. Begin your paper with an introductory sentence. A good introductory sentence gets the reader's attention. After this introductory sentence, you can write something like, the purpose of this paper is to, and then you can simply list the objectives of the paper directly off of the course syllabus. So again, looking at the introductory paragraph, you're going to provide a short background, something that grabs the attention of the reader, and then you're simply going to preview what the objectives of the paper are. I recommend that you simply just list the objectives of the paper as they're listed in the syllabus or in the scoring rubric. We'll be using headings for every paper. Always begin a new main point. And I mix the words main point and objective. The objectives are off of the scoring rubric. They're the list of the material that we were supposed to cover in the paper. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I mixed the word objective and main point up quite a bit throughout, not only this presentation, but you'll notice in my feedback on your papers. Okay, so always begin a new main point or objective discussion with a level 1 heading. Level 1 headings are centered on the page, they're in bold, they consist of upper and lowercase words. Here's an example. Okay, so you'll notice that this is centered. This is an objective from your week 3 ethical decision-making paper, and it's the first 14 steps of the ethical decision-making process defined and applied to my selected scenario. This is an objective directly out of the scoring rubric. It's bold, it's centered, and you'll notice there's no period. Okay? So here's how this would read right after that particular level 1 heading. The following discussion analysis of the first 14 steps of the Canadian Psychological Association, or CPA, as applied to my above selected scenario is from the text for this course, and then I give a reference. We're going to talk more about how to do APA references a little bit more in the next video. So there are level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 kinds of headings. And it's important to realize that if you're going to use a level 2 heading, you must have at least 2 subpoints under a level 1 heading to be able to do that according to the APA standards. So a level 2 heading begins at the left margin. It's not centered on the page, it begins at the left margin. It is bold. We do use upper and lowercase words. And we use a hard return and indent immediately after the level 2 heading. Here's an example. Again, from that same objective that I had on the previous slide. The first 14 steps, the ethical decision-making process defined and applied to my selected scenario. The following discussion and analysis of the first 14 steps of the Canadian Psychological Association as applied to my above selected scenario is from the text of this course, and then again there's the reference. Now, this is the level 2 heading. You'll notice that it's all the way over to the left, as opposed to the level 1 heading, which is always centered on the page. So we start at the far left margin. You'll notice that it's bold, and you'll notice that it is capitalized. In addition, there is no period. Okay? So you'll notice for this particular example, I've got 1, 2 subpoints under the main heading. If I only had tried to use one heading, one level 2 heading under the level 1 heading, that would not be acceptable. I have to have at least 2, according to APA standards. Okay? So I've got my step 1, state the question, dilemma, or concerns as clearly as possible. Again, no period. A hard return with an indent. The dilemma or concern with this scenario is that by treating my sister-in-law, I would be entering into a dual relationship where it may be a challenge to stay within ethical boundaries. Any dual relationship involves risk, and again, there's a reference. Okay? And then I go directly to step 2, and again, all the way over to the left, bold, upper and lowercase words, no period. And then I go right into my material for the level 2 heading. As I mentioned, there's also level 3 headings. Very rarely have students for this course use level 3 headings, but just in case you do, this is how it looks. And again, just like you have to have 2 level 2s under a level 1, you have to have 2 level 3s under a level 2, or else APA format is not being followed. So, here's how a level 3 heading goes. Indented 5 to 7 spaces. It's bolded. We capitalize only the first word. We do use a period. And we continue the text without a hard return. Here's an example. So here you can see that the level 3 heading is bolded, but it's indented 5 to 7 spaces. Only the first letter is capitalized, and I use a period. With the level 2 heading, remember we did a hard return and we started the actual response down underneath the level 3 heading. So, Direct quotations, period. Direct quotations must mirror the original source word for word, even if errors are contained in the original text. And again, there's a reference. And you'll notice I have 2 level 3s. Again, if I tried to use one, I would not be within APA rules. So I have 2. And again, indented 5 to 7, the first letter is capitalized, it's bolded, and there is a period. Okay. Moving on. In between each main point, we need to use a transition sentence. It's generally done at the end of each main point, but it can be done at the beginning of the subsequent main point. Most people do it at the end of the main point. It's a little easier to do. And I'll show you an example in a second. And so what a transition sentence does is that it ties what you've just discussed with what you'll discuss next. It helps the reader kind of follow the logic and the flow of your paper. It helps not only keep them interested, but it's got a natural kind of a flow to it. Okay, here's an example. This is an example from a student, from a transition sentence that she used in a recent paper. And it says, "This is why professional psychology has maintained professional standards to safeguard the client's right to consent and refusal. Included in this process is the importance of maintaining confidentiality, which we will explore next." So I've given just a little summary of what I've discussed in my main point, and then I let the reader know where we're going next. Okay. The conclusion of the paper involves the use of the word conclusion as a level 1 heading. So level 1 heading is centered on the paper, it's bolded, it's capitalized, and we do not use a period. Okay? And what the conclusion is designed to do is to remind the reader of the importance of the material, and then again, review what it was that we discussed, review the objectives of the paper. And it's okay to simply list them in this paper we have discussed, and then list the objectives as listed in the scoring rubric. So then, here's what we've looked at in this particular video. We've explored the American Psychological Association format support materials, and again, they're listed in the main form. I list them separately each week so you don't have to go back digging through different weeks to try to find them. We talked a little bit about general paper requirements, university allowed exceptions. I showed you an example of the title page. We reviewed some level 1, 2, and 3 headings. Took a look at the introductory paragraph, the first page, a basic understanding of transition sentences, and then how to do a conclusion. Now, it's important that you remember that APA format is very exacting. It's very exacting, especially when it comes to references, which we'll discuss next in the next video. Thank you.